The war between Russia and Ukraine continues since February 2022, causing heavy damage to both nations. The war really began in 2014 when Russia invaded the Crimea region of Ukraine. Since then, naval incidents, cyber warfare, and heightened political tensions were between the two neighboring states before the real eruption took place in 2022 when Russia declared a full-scale invasion against Ukraine. Within a period of 2 months, a considerable part of eastern Ukraine was in the hands of the Russian troops. But the Ukraine forces and civilians organized very well after the first few months of the invasion and resist the invasion to a considerable extent. Now we are talking at a point where 16 months after the beginning of the invasion, and both countries are engaged in heavy military conflicts daily without giving a hint of an end to this war soon, even though it hurts innocent civilians. There is a group of people who love to see the continuing of this war as they are generating billions of profits through this Ukraine invasion, and they are doing everything to destroy the plans to bring a peaceful end to this war. Before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more interesting political and economic stories. Since the beginning of the invasion, the US and other Western countries are sending military equipment worth billions of dollars to Ukraine. Last year, the United States decided to send 6,500 units of Javelin anti-tank missile systems, which are manufactured by two US-based military equipment companies, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. One missile roughly costs around $78,000 to $100,000, and 200 more units are coming from the UK as well. So you can roughly estimate the amount of money that they are going to spend only for these Javelin missiles. They are sending not only Javelin missiles, but radar systems, military drones, rocket launchers, artilleries, guns, and bombs as well. All these money flows back to the U.S. economy directly or indirectly, and these U.S. defense contractors are the biggest beneficiaries of this war. Even though U.S.-based companies are the main weapon suppliers for this war, Europe-based companies like BAE Systems and Thales are also heavily profiting from this war. So, these companies are happy to see an endless war on Ukrainian soil as they are generating huge profits through this weapon trade. With the disruption of Russian oil and gas supplies to the global market due to the economic sanctions imposed after the Ukraine invasion, oil and gas prices experienced a sudden hike. So, alternative suppliers came to fill the vacuum created by the disruptions of the Russian oil and gas supplies, generating profits worth of billions of dollars. Two giant oil companies, Shell and British Petroleum, have earned a profit worth of 8.66 billion euros and 4.54 billion euros respectively in the first quarter of the year 2023, showing a clear improvement relative to the previous year due to the absence of low-cost Russian oil in the market for the consumers. These are only just two examples, and all the non-Russian-based companies are generating huge profits through the absence of rival Russian companies in the market. So all these oil companies indirectly support aggravating the ongoing problem than solving it peacefully. Both Russia and Ukraine are famous as main agricultural producers, especially contributing to fulfill the global wheat demand in a large scale. But after the beginning of the war, most of the agricultural activities were affected, decreasing the supply of Ukrainian food products to the global market. On the other hand, Western camp imposed heavy sanctions on Russian products, banning trade transactions with this giant food producer. So, the demand in the market was very high relative to the low supply, creating a price hike for the available limited food supply. According to the reports published by different economic research institutes, hedge funds have emerged as the biggest winners from the global food price hike caused as a result of this Russo-Ukrainian war. These reports claim that the top 10 hedge funds have generated a profit of around $2 billion through this price hike, especially by selling grains and soya beans immediately after the invasion. Talking about the issue, the co-chair of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, Olivier de Schutter, said, "Hedge funds and financial speculators have made obscene profits by betting on hunger and exacerbating it. That cannot be right. At the start of the Ukraine war, financial investors piled into grains and commodities in large numbers, seeking to capitalize on uncertainty and rising food prices, and they hit the jackpot. After the Russian invasion, many Ukrainians fled to neighboring nations like Poland, the Czech Republic, and Estonia, looking for a secure living environment. According to the IMF, the European Union has spent around 37 billion euros to support refugees from Ukraine and most of them have been granted working status by the countries like Poland and Estonia. According to the reports published by Poland last year, approximately around 1.2 million refugees have been offered social security numbers, and now they have the full work right within Poland. So, more than half of these refugees have already found a job and paying taxes to the Poland government. According to a study done by the University of Warsaw, tax-paying Ukrainians in Poland have already paid taxes worth $2.4 billion. This amount exceeds the financial aid that was provided to Ukraine government by Poland. Aren't they really profiting from the war? According to the estimations made by IMF, Ukrainian refugees will contribute to the economies of Estonia, Poland, and the Czech Republic will be 2.2% to 2.3%, and in Germany, 0.6% to 0.65% respectively by 2026. These migrated Ukrainians are contributing not only to the labor market of the country, but also for the progress of the economy of those counties through starting new businesses and making various investments. All these things bring positive effects on the countries where now these Ukrainian refugees live, but nothing on Ukraine or Russia. Not only the Ukrainians, but also the Russians who hate to live under Putin's regime are currently migrating into the surrounding countries like Georgia, Armenia, Serbia, and other Central Asian countries, bringing some positive impacts on those economies. As an example, these Russian emigrations have brought a number of positive effects on the Georgian economy, causing a stable economic development. The contribution from these Russians to the Georgian economy has helped to strengthen the national currency of Georgia, lari. A significant boost in the Georgian real estate market is also visible with the purchase of new residents by those migrated Russians. In November 2022, the average property price within Ukraine has raised by 210% compared to the prices that were 18 months earlier. A huge inflow of capital to the Georgian economy is visible with the transfer of $1.412 billion to the Georgian accounts by the Russians within the last 12 months. According to the statistics published by the Russian news portal RBC, Russians have transferred more than $2.5 billion to Kyrgyzstan and more than $3 billion to Armenia. All these changes happened suddenly after the invasion of Ukraine last year, subjecting to heavy sanctions from the Western economic powers. Still, the Russians are living under heavy sanctions, and for those reasons, people with migratory capacity are moving abroad, searching for a safer and more luxurious heaven for their lives. You can see how the neighbors of both Ukraine and Russia are heavily profiting through that war in an indirect way. But most of those migrations and consequences are mostly unintentional, even though they made a profit by the ongoing war. Russia is mostly self-sufficient with the immense resources that it possesses and is currently resistant with the economic sanctions imposed by the Western powers. But Russia will pass the level that it can economically tolerate if they continuously lost the labor force and money. Now you can understand, there are several groups which are profiting from the Russia-Ukrainian war, and they don't want to disrupt this immense flow of money to their pockets. So, they are pumping money generously to make the factors that are needed to continue the war in Ukraine, blocking all the opportunities to bring a peaceful end to this war.